台湾問題っていうのは日本の問題でもあるんですよ。台湾と日本は切り離すことができない。だから本当に台湾が取られたら日本の防衛ライン、そしてエネルギーライン、これが完全に崩れるんですね。ですからここをしっかり守って中国の台湾への侵略を許すわけにはいかないというのは今防衛省も含めて非常に大きな危機感を抱いているのは事実です。
Cleo, you just heard what Jay said. What do countries in the region think about Japan's role in providing security?
So Japan is providing some interesting solutions across the region, especially around things like economics, and they're trying to create a different LNG, liquid natural gas system, which would mean that Japanese ships would be going through the region, which justifies freedom of operation navigations. So Japan's approach is actually quite complex and interesting and includes an economic component. And Japan is critical for the area that's likely to be the kinetic front line, which is the islands like Palau, the Micronesian zone, so just beyond Taiwan. We know that China wants to take Taiwan, but they're not stopping at Taiwan. The goal is to get across the Pacific. This is something that we know from World War II, and Japan knows it very well. So Japan has been trying to reinforce the countries of Micronesia, like Palau and Federated States of Micronesia, Marshall Islands, all of the sites of major battles during World War II that are going to be critical for defending against China's kinetic output. And I just want to say, the countries in the region know this is military. You know, the further away you are, the more you can think, oh, it's just economic or this or that. But the Chinese Communist Party wants to militarily take over pieces of territory that belong to the United States. They want Guam. You know, they want to come up to Hawaii. This is war. It's political warfare, economic warfare, and actual warfare.
So Cleo, oftentimes we talk about Japan as our cornerstone ally in Asia. It is where, for instance, especially on Okinawa, where we have the bulk of our forces that are committed to the region. So Cleo, when we look at Japan, do you think that Japan is ready to step up to that role? You personally?
So I think that Japan has the same problem that a lot of countries have, which is there's a division between the economic and political community, which is making a lot of money off of China, deliberately through the Chinese Communist Party to try to soften the approach, and the defense, intelligence, and security community, which is much more concerned about China. So that dichotomy is still there. There's still a lot of political and economic influence to try to stunt Japan's approach. They have the capabilities. They could do a lot more with interoperability with the American forces. The U.S. Navy and the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force work well together, but other than that, interoperability is a problem within the Japanese military and between Japan and its allies. So there are areas that could be worked on. There's no joint command. There's just no U.S.-Japanese joint command. If that came into play, then we'd know that the defense, security, intelligence communities had won that fight and that Japan was serious.
So, Congressman, we know that Florida representatives in Washington have really been in the forefront of China policy. Your two senators, Rick Scott, Marco Rubio, many of your colleagues in the House from Florida. If you could talk a minute just about how the congressional Republicans and others have been looking at China.
Well, we've been trying to fight against, it was great to have Trump in office when he was taking a much more aggressive stance to the things that China was doing. Unfortunately, now with the new administration, we try to file bills like I told you about the importation of citrus. I have a bill that would ban the importation of citrus from China into the United States because I, one, don't think that that's appropriate, and two, we need to be protecting our domestic farm supply here and helping our domestic farmers. I also have a bill as it relates to anybody that is funded. We know, and it's happened here in Florida, I don't know if anybody paid attention to the research, the medical research that was being done at Moffitt Cancer Center, where their CEOs and leadership was being paid off by the Chinese Communist Party. I have a bill that would provide if anybody is studying here or interning here or visiting as a student here on a visa, that if they are being paid for by the Chinese Communist Party or being reimbursed by the Chinese Communist Party or the Chinese government, that has to be reported to the federal government, to the State Department, to our intelligence officials, so that if there are issues, we know that individual X who's here in Florida studying at the University of Florida is being paid for by the Chinese Communist Party, and if he's involved in research, our intelligence officials can know to keep an eye out for those type of things. And unfortunately, the Democratic-led Congress has no interest in taking these issues on. And it's unfortunate because this is happening. It has happened. Just Google Moffitt Cancer Center and you can read about the research, our medical research that we are paying for on our tax dime, both in Florida and the United States, is going back to China because people are being paid for by the Chinese Communist Party and they are stealing our intellectual property and our research.
Well, obviously, even though you're in Congress, you haven't lost your sense of common sense. So that's really good.
Common sense is lacking in Washington, I will say that. That's why I like spending a lot of time in Florida.
Sounds good to me. This is really great, by the way. From someone who just came from a lot of snow to down here, I think that this is pretty good. By the way, I want to open this up. Unfortunately, we don't have microphones because of COVID protocols, but if you have a question, I will repeat it and we'll get to the panel. And there is a very enthusiastic woman. Okay, for everyone's benefit, she was concerned about Taiwan and what China will do, and I'll throw this to Cleo.
Yeah, so you're right about Taiwan because it doesn't stop with Taiwan. So if China takes Taiwan, Taiwan is, we've known this since World War II. It's an unsinkable aircraft carrier. I mean, they might talk about, it was always part of China, whatever. They want it for strategic purposes. And if you hold Taiwan, you've broken out of the first island chain. It's the line of islands that kind of hems in China. And you've broken the will of a lot of countries nearby because it meant the US didn't come to save Taiwan. Right? So if we don't save, if the US doesn't save Taiwan, what are the Philippines going to do? They're going to fold. What's Cambodia going to do? They've already folded to a certain degree. What's Japan going to do? Japan is going to be forced into a position where it might have to go nuclear in order to defend itself. But all the way down through the region, the US didn't do it. They didn't bail out their friend, all the way down to Australia. So there's a good report that's just come out that basically plays this out, that says if Taiwan goes red, the whole region goes at least pink, all the way through into the Indian Ocean. So it is, you put your finger on it, it is actually the critical strategic issue of the time.
So, Jay Aiba, the geography of Taiwan, and continuing on this subject, and it's a really great question, and thank you so much. The geography of Taiwan and Japan are integrated. Matter of fact, the southernmost inhabited Japanese island is actually south of Taipei. So, Jay, could you tell us what people in Tokyo are thinking in terms of the defense of Taiwan?
今、ゴードンちゃんが全くおっしゃったように、台湾問題っていうのは日本の問題でもあるんですよ。台湾と日本は切り離すことができない。だから本当に台湾が取られたら日本の防衛ライン、そしてエネルギーライン、これが完全に崩れるんですね。ですからここをしっかり守って中国の台湾への侵略を許すわけにはいかないというのは今防衛省も含めて非常に大きな危機感を抱いているのは事実です。
Yes, as Gordon mentioned, you are right. Taiwan and Japan are in the same boat, so the relations cannot be severed. So if Taiwan was taken by China, yes, we are going to lose the line of the defense and defense and everything. So we have to protect that, and we cannot let China keep doing that. So the Ministry of Defense has been very conscious about it. This is a very critical issue for us as well.
And Jay, new prime minister in Japan, just as there's a new president in the United States, Prime Minister Suga, is he going to continue the good policies of his predecessor, Shinzo Abe?
はい、もうそれを日本の保守の仲間はみんなそれを期待しておりますけれども、まだ未知数なんですよ。本当にどこまで、菅首相が安倍首相の路線を引き継いでいけるかどうかというところは、だからこそその国民の声というか草の根の声というか日本を守らなければいけないという声を上げるためにも私たち JCU が存在しているということでもあるわけです。